If you are aware of all the suffering going on in the world today and wish for this suffering to stop, this presentation is for you. Please watch this presentation all the way through the end. If anything in this presentation doesn't make sense to you, please contact me and ask me for clarification. My contact information is listed here and is copied in the description of this video. I am using the word suffering to mean the internally felt experience of one's own situation as truly emotionally unacceptable. I distinguish this from pain or a simple lack of preferability of one's own circumstances, which in small amounts can be managed with a positive emotional attitude and can motivate us toward growth, toward quick and simple actions of resolution. But when pain becomes too much to handle, then it becomes suffering, which, if we agree upon the definition here, at least for the purpose of this presentation, is inherently undesirable and unenjoyable to the one experiencing it. Yes, suffering can also motivate us toward growth, but such growth still has the potential to take place without us ever having felt for one moment that this experience should not be taking place at all. In other words, we don't want to suffer, and we don't need to either, if we understand suffering, as I use the word, as true emotional unacceptability. So if you are aware of all the instances of suffering going on in the world today, all the horrible rape, torture, murder, slavery, hatred, poverty, all forms of violence conducted upon human beings as well as the rest of nature, all of those horrible situations in which humans and animals alike would experience within themselves the subjective experience of suffering. If you are aware of all of these instances of suffering, and if you wish for this suffering to stop, and if you understand what needs to be done in order for this suffering to stop, then that means that you have empathy for the world and a great deal of intelligence about the world. And because of your empathy and intelligence, you have tried communicating what you know about the world and what needs to be done in it to other people, with the hope that these other people will be equally as capable as you are of understanding this information, and with the hope that they will be equally as willing as you are to help you do what needs to be done for the world. In other words, you have hoped that these people would turn out to have equally as much empathy and intelligence as you do, or at least enough of these people to make it relatively easy for you to stop the world's suffering, because with more of you working together, it's easier. Yes, it might never be possible for us to completely avoid our own physical death, our experience of grief when our loved ones die, as well as accidental illnesses and injuries, but most of the problems of this world can be avoided by means of people being made aware of these problems, people being made aware of the logical solutions to these problems, the logical solutions that do exist, and then people caring enough to act to put these solutions into effect. These problems which can be solved are the very ones which you try spreading awareness of for the exact purpose of getting them solved. And if all of these problems were indeed solved, then apart from the unavoidable situations listed here, all of our lives would still be so otherwise good that these situations would indeed only be experienced as minor instances of pain as opposed to overwhelming suffering or true emotional unacceptability. So it is conceivable for there to exist a world without suffering if there could exist enough people with your same level of empathy and intelligence. But unfortunately, as you may agree from your own experience, it is not the case that a sufficient number of people currently possess your same level of empathy and intelligence. You have done your best to communicate to these people what they need to know, but these people have not been able to acknowledge the simple and obvious truth that you speak. These people have ignored you, mocked you, and deliberately misinterpreted you, thus proving that they are not as capable as you are of understanding the truth of this world, and proving that they do not care as much as you do about stopping the world's suffering. And so they have not helped you stop the world's suffering, and so the world's suffering has continued, with only painfully slow and tragically reversible progress ever being made against this suffering. And if you truly care enough about the world, then you've gotten very angry over this whole situation, and rightly so. You have the right to be angry, because the world's suffering is serious and does need to be stopped, and can be stopped, and yet these selfish, ignorant bastards have refused to help you stop it. Instead, they have insisted on defending the presence of this suffering in the world, and in doing so, through their disgusting arrogance and baffling stupidity, they have contributed to your very own emotional distress as well. And no amount of words seems to be able to fix this, because words haven't succeeded in breaking these people out of their ignorance and selfishness in the first place. But what if you could combat these people's ignorance and selfishness through more than just words alone? Since you're an intelligent person, that means that you have the capacity for imagination, the ability to hold an image in your mind as something that could possibly become a reality. So on the following slides, I'm going to describe a scenario for you to imagine. Regardless of how likely you think this scenario is to actually take place, I want you to hold the image in your mind of what it would look like. So I want you to imagine what it would look like if you could take these selfish and ignorant people and just snap your fingers and then instantly, telepathically copy your entire body of knowledge about the world's suffering and how to stop it, as clearly as you already understand this information within your own mind, directly into these people's minds. Now, in this hypothetical scenario, I am not talking about mind control. I am not talking about taking complete control of another person's mind by simply automatically replacing their entire body of knowledge with your body of knowledge. What I am talking about is simply copying everything that you understand about the world and what needs to be done in it, as clearly as you already understand this information within your own mind, directly into these people's minds, so that these people also can simply understand this same information equally as clearly as you do. These people will not automatically lose every bit of their own understanding of objective reality. Your understanding of reality will simply be added to theirs, so that your understandings and their understandings can be directly compared to each other within these people's own minds. And since you obviously understand reality better than these people, the inevitable result of this comparison would be as follows. Imagine that this picture here represents your understanding of reality. This picture is clear, broad, and accurate, just like your own understanding of the world as a whole, whereas the images of reality in other people's minds may be less clear, meaning that they have a clouded view of reality, less broad, meaning that they do not have as wide-ranging of a view of reality, that they do not see the whole picture, or less accurate, meaning that parts of their view of reality are backwards, distorted, inverted, or even missing entirely. So if your correct image of reality were to be directly copied into these people's minds, then they would see, equally as clearly and undeniably as you do, all the ways in which this image is indeed clearer, broader, and more accurate than their own. And so they would voluntarily accept your view of reality as their own without their formerly held images having to be deleted from their minds, because they would honestly recognize those formerly held images for the distortions and the partialities that they are. Now imagine what it would look like if, at the same time that you snap your fingers, in addition to copying your objective understanding of reality into these people's minds, you are also copying your level of empathy into these people's minds, your own internally felt emotional opposition to the presence of suffering in the world. In this hypothetical scenario, these people now have the same internal understanding that you do about the world's suffering and how to stop it, but without empathy, they still wouldn't care enough to acknowledge this information, admit to you that you are right, much less would they actually care to help you do what needs to be done in order to stop the world's suffering. But with your empathy copied into these people's minds, with these people becoming equally as internally, emotionally opposed as you are to the presence of suffering in this world, they will become equally as motivated as you are to do everything that needs to be done in order to stop this world's suffering. And I am not talking about making these people completely the same as you. These people will still be able to maintain their unique individual characteristics that are not the result of their ignorance or their selfishness. All that you will be doing is making these people equally as empathetic as you are toward all individuals, and equally as understanding of what is objectively true about reality itself, external to any individual's subjective beliefs or preferences. And that's all that you want for the simple purpose of stopping the world's suffering in the first place, right? So again, in this hypothetical scenario, we are imagining what it would look like if you could just snap your fingers in order to instantly, telepathically copy your empathy and your understanding of the world directly into the minds of all the selfish and ignorant people who need this empathy and this understanding of yours. The logical result of this hypothetical scenario would be that these people would become equally as motivated as you are to stop the world's suffering, and equally as knowledgeable as you are on how to do so. And therefore, it would also become extremely easy for all of you to work together to actually achieve this ending of the world's suffering. So after imagining this scenario, if all of this were indeed possible, if it were indeed the case that you could achieve all of this, set all of this into motion with one simple snap of your fingers, then you would do so, right? Wonderful. And that's the great news that I have for you. It isn't as simple as one snap of your fingers, but if you can be open-minded to the evidence which I will be presenting on the following few slides, telepathic communication is in fact a real phenomenon. It is in fact possible for telepathic abilities to be acquired through scientific means, and there is a process that can be undertaken in order to eventually telepathically copy your level of empathy and understanding into the minds of every single human being on Earth. And with that level of unity and cooperation, freedom from suffering, everything that you desire for the world would be the inevitable result indeed. All that is required for this process to take place is for you to listen to it as I describe it to you later in this presentation, understand it conceptually, understand it as an idea to be acted upon, recognize it as the quickest and most efficient way possible to accomplish everything that you want accomplished for the world, unless you can offer any honest suggestions on how to make this process even more efficient. I'm open-minded to that, but until you can provide any such suggestions, let us recognize what I am presenting now as the quickest and most efficient way that any of us can come up with so far, and then please contribute your own effort into actually getting this process accomplished. So out of all of the steps of this process, which I will be explaining, please actually complete all of the steps that you can. So first, the evidence for telepathic communication. Telepathy has been noted to take place naturally, as has been made obvious by people such as British biologist Rupert Sheldrake in his works listed here, also copied in the description of this video. I present these works from Sheldrake as background information for why there's usually so much skepticism toward the idea of telepathy, and how truly unfounded and unscientific such skepticism actually is in the face of the quite considerable evidence that Sheldrake explains. I present this information so that if you can be open-minded and honestly assess the evidence, then you can accept it going forward that telepathy is real and can be used for certain purposes, especially for a purpose as noble and as reasonable as literally stopping all of the world's suffering. So if you want the world's suffering to stop and you're tired of arguing with people about how to stop it, it's in your best interest to at least consider that telepathy might actually be a possibility. Because regardless of who already possesses natural telepathic abilities, and regardless of the strength of these natural telepathic abilities, it has also been observed that telepathic abilities can be acquired or given to us through scientific means. One way in which telepathic abilities can be acquired is through electromagnetic brainwave synchronization. Michael Persinger, a neuroscientist at Laurentian University in Sudbury, Ontario, Canada, gave a lecture explaining that when two people are wearing specially designed helmets that pulsate a physically safe electromagnetic wave around their heads, getting their brains to vibrate at the same frequency, then experiments are done proving that these two people are able to communicate with each other telepathically. This telepathic connection isn't perfect, but if you pay close attention to this lecture, it's obvious that there is some remote communication taking place. This lecture is called No More Secrets from 2011 and is also linked in the description of this video. In particular, this lecture mentions that telepathic phenomena are most observable when the following areas of the brain are made to vibrate at a frequency of 7 Hz. These areas of the brain are known as the right occipital lobe, the right parietal lobe, and the hippocampus, and these are two diagrams of the brain showing where those areas are. Other works from Persinger also mention the right caudal or backside of the temporal lobe, along with the following subregions of the temporal lobe: the parahippocampal gyrus, which is the ventromedial or mid-underside edge of the temporal lobe; the entorhinal cortex, which is the center of the temporal lobe, known as the brain pacemaker; the stratum stellare of Stefan, which is the second layer of the entorhinal cortex; and the verrucae gyri hippocampi, which are the star-shaped cells within this layer of the entorhinal cortex. Persinger's other works also mention electromagnetic wave frequencies of 7.5, 7.8, 8, 14, 20, and 40 hertz at which the brain is noted to vibrate during instances of telepathic communication. These other works of Persinger are listed here and copied in the description of this video as well. These works of Persinger also talk about instances of naturally occurring telepathy and provide evidence that both naturally occurring and technologically facilitated instances of telepathy have been found to increase in both frequency and strength when there is less physical disturbance in the Earth's overall magnetic field. So when the Earth's electromagnetic activity is calm, instances of telepathy, whether they're natural or with technology, are both more frequent, occur more commonly, and they're stronger, meaning that it's more obvious that this is telepathic communication happening. In particular, the area between the Earth's surface and the ionosphere normally vibrates at a frequency of 7 Hz, and since telepathic communication has been noted to take place when two people's brainwaves are synchronized at this same frequency, and since telepathic phenomena in general are found to increase when there is less disturbance in the Earth's magnetic field, it's reasonable to assume that human thoughts can be telepathically transmitted through this Earth's magnetic field when there is little vibratory competition against the transmission of these thoughts. Persinger also proposes that human thoughts can even be permanently stored in this field and accessed remotely. So, another way in which telepathic abilities can be given to us is through the use of certain consciousness-expanding substances, also known as entheogens or psychedelics. Psychedelics, when used with the proper mindset and in a safe setting, are in most cases perfectly safe and extremely beneficial in treating mental health disorders such as depression, anxiety, addiction, and post-traumatic stress, as shown by a wealth of evidence such as these 3 sources here, also again linked in the description. That being said, a wealth of sources also provide evidence that these substances can allow telepathic communication to take place under certain circumstances. David P. Luke, a psychologist at the University of Greenwich in London, UK, is one prominent source of such information in his works listed here, also again copied in the description. Other sources of evidence for psychedelic telepathy include these sources listed here, again copied in the description as well as these sources, again listed in the description as well. In particular, what one person has described to me about their own method of telepathically communicating with people through the use of psychedelics is as follows. You and a friend both take 200 micrograms of LSD, wait an hour, and then smoke N,N-dimethyltryptamine while keeping your eyes open and staring into each other's eyes. Meditative music, crystals such as natural quartz, and following a raw fruit diet are all said to improve the effectiveness of this technique. The full explanation of this technique is copied here if you want to pause and read through it. And this seems like the most promising method so far, since the sources previously listed most often point to LSD alone as a means of opening up channels of telepathic communication between people, and since the entities encountered in the DMT experience have been commonly reported to be speaking objects into existence in a visual modality of language. This latter observation was popularized by psychedelic philosopher Terence McKenna, and it led him to realize that true telepathy is not merely hearing the voice inside another person's head, but seeing what the other person means, seeing the images within each other's minds, which in ordinary conversation we attach words to and then speak these words to each other to try to reconstruct these images within each other's minds. But if we could just look into each other's minds and see these images directly, then this would be much more efficient, since there would be no more chance of us misunderstanding each other's words and therefore miscommunicating. It's interesting to note that the occipital lobe mentioned in Persinger's work is in fact the area of the brain responsible for visual processing. So McKenna's original audio recordings explaining this are listed here and again copied in the description as well. McKenna also tells the story of when he himself combined LSD and DMT. During this experience, he recounts, he received a knock on his door which frightened him, causing him to open his eyes, jump out of his bed, and pull the trip with him into the outside world, with the geometric figures and machine elves, as he calls them, being clearly visible to him right there in his room. He, quote, broke up the ordinary division between the trip and normality, since he had only ever witnessed the DMT entities with his eyes closed in their own seemingly separate, walled-off world. This story lends further credence to the idea that if two people take LSD and DMT together while keeping their eyes open and staring into each other's eyes, then they can access the visible language unfolding within each other's minds and therefore telepathically communicate. They can also both see the same things together. So the source explaining this is also again copied in the description. So based on this evidence so far, if we combine this LSD plus DMT method with Persinger's brainwave synchronization helmets, then we can form an even stronger telepathic connection with each other. So here begins the process of telepathically copying your level of empathy and understanding into the minds of all humanity. The selfish and ignorant people of this world are the ones who most strongly need this empathy and this understanding of yours, but since these same people wouldn't be willing to have their own selfishness and ignorance eradicated, these people wouldn't agree to form this telepathic connection with you using these methods. So instead, we good people of the world who already want the world's suffering to stop and therefore want everybody to become just as empathetic and understanding as we are, since that logically would allow the world's suffering to stop, we good people are the ones who have to first form this telepathic connection among ourselves. My name is Elijah Osborne, and I currently reside in Las Vegas, Nevada, United States. If you are willing and able to travel here anytime soon, please contact me and let me know so that we can meet in person and form this telepathic connection with each other using the LSD plus DMT technique and or Persinger's brainwave synchronization helmets, preferably both in combination, but whichever we can acquire first. If you let me know where you're located, then I will also let you know if I ever get a chance to travel there to meet you. And if you are willing and able to provide these psychedelic substances for this telepath connection, then please also let me know. Persinger's helmets are also available for purchase from the website shown here, also in the description. So if you are also willing and able to obtain and or provide these helmets for you and I to use together, then please also let me know, especially if you yourself are already in possession of these helmets, whether you yourself are behind this website or whether you've worked with Persinger or otherwise. Please let me know if you can provide these helmets for us to use. Because when we form this telepathic connection with each other, we can communicate to each other all of our perspectives on the suffering going on in this world and what needs to be done in order to stop this suffering. By learning these ideas from each other as clearly as we already understand these ideas within our own minds, and by directly comparing these ideas to each other in order to honestly see which out of all of our ideas are the most accurate, most complete pictures of reality, by doing this, we will be able to reach an honestly understood consensus on the truth of this world and what needs to be done in it. And we will be doing this far more quickly and efficiently than we can accomplish through words alone. And since we're already kind and intelligent people, it won't be that difficult for us to reach this worldview consensus and then form a plan of action on what to do next. In other words, we will both be telepathically copying our views of reality into each other's minds, similar to the scenario I asked you to imagine earlier, except instead of to these selfish and ignorant people, we will both be doing this to each other mutually. And since we both already know enough about the world, since we both already have a part of the clear picture of reality within our minds, our worldviews shouldn't be that difficult to combine into an even more comprehensive composite image of reality. So we'll both be giving each other part of the picture to form an even clearer, more wide-ranging picture of reality. So we'll form an honestly understood consensus on what is objectively true about the world and what needs to be done in it, including all the following next steps of how to continue spreading this telepathic connection to more people so that they also can understand what we understand and help us do what we know needs to be done. So after forming this telepathic connection with each other, we will both then repeat this process with another person. That way, all three of us can understand each other's worldviews to form an even more comprehensive consensus on what is true about the world and what needs to be done in it. Then all three of us will repeat this process with a fourth person. Then all four of us will repeat this process with a fifth person. Then all five of us will repeat this process with a sixth person, and so on until there are enough of us who can complete this next phase. Out of all of us who form this telepathic connection with each other, all of us who also have scientific expertise in a field of study such as engineering, physics, neuroscience, cardiology, or general human biology, all of us can also work together to conduct further research on the electromagnetic mechanics of our brainwave synchronization helmets, as well as the human brain, heart, and nervous system in order to discover all the steps required for us to then redesign this technology in the ways that will be described on the following slides. And when we ourselves form this telepathic connection with each other, we can also accelerate the process of exchanging ideas with each other on how to go about doing this scientifically. So if you have scientific expertise in any of these fields of study and believe that you can help research or redesign this technology in the following ways, especially if, again, you already have direct experience with developing or working with Persinger's brainwave synchronization helmets, then please also contact me and let me know. We can turn this device into, instead of a helmet, a device that sends out these same electromagnetic waves remotely so that it can synchronize our brain waves without having to be placed directly around our heads. At the same time, of course, we will be making sure that this electromagnetic wave remains physically safe for our bodies. Once we've formed a telepathic connection with each other using the LSD plus DMT technique in combination with this electromagnetic brainwave synchronization, once we've done this a sufficient number of times, our brains should be able to access this channel of telepathic communication with the same degree of accuracy through just the electromagnetic stimulation alone. So psychedelics aren't the only part of this process of forming this telepathic connection, and we won't have to be on them. Not all of us will have to be on them all the time. So in order to ensure that this electromagnetic wave technology also succeeds in making sure that we all feel as much empathy for each other as possible, we can also develop it so that it synchronizes our heartbeat frequencies as well. The physical human heart is indeed strongly tied to our sense of emotional well-being and our sense of empathy for each other, as the following sources explain, also again linked in the description. The heart also generates an electromagnetic field of its own, and one particular study from the HeartMath Institute, listed below and in the description, measured the brainwave and heartbeat signals of a mother and her infant and found that over time the mother's brainwaves synchronized to her infant's heartbeat. This suggests the ability of a pure, innocent, higher vibrational beating heart to influence both the hearts and the brains of other people in the surrounding area, thus eliciting responses of compassion. So if this ability can be harnessed and amplified through the electromagnetic pulse technology, then anybody's heartbeat can become synchronized to a vibratory level of fundamental compassion. The study shown here, also in the description, also explains that the human emotional response of compassion, which consists of understanding others' suffering and then acting to stop it, exactly what we all need to do. This response of compassion is associated with first, a decrease in what is called vagally mediated heart rate variability, which is variation in the time between people's heartbeats, as mediated by a nerve called the vagus nerve, shown here. And then also an increase in this vagally mediated heart rate variability. So a decrease and then an increase. So if this pattern of heart rate variability can be induced within people through the electromagnetic pulse, then a compassionate response to the objective understanding of all the suffering going on in the world, a compassionate response to this understanding can also be guaranteed. And the study shown here, also in the description, also associates compassion with the areas of the brain known as the gyral portion of the bilateral anterior cingulate cortex, as well as the left anterior insula. So if these areas of the brain can also be stimulated through the electromagnetic pulse, then compassion can also be guaranteed. So based on this new evidence, we can develop this technology so that it sends out this electromagnetic wave to a small group of people, thus synchronizing our brainwaves so that we all become immersed in a telepathic connection with each other, and so that this technology also gets all of us to feel fundamental compassion for each other. And it's worth noting again that not all of us have to be on psychedelics for this. All of us who have already formed one-on-one telepathic connections with each other through the LSD plus DMT technique in combination with the original brainwave synchronization helmets, all of us will be included in these groups so that our previously reached consensus becomes part of the new consensus reached among all of us. That way we will already have a strong enough basis for our collective objective worldview, and any adjustments that need to be made to it by any new person entering our telepathic connection, any such adjustments will only be in the minor details of this consensus. In other words, there isn't really that much that we need to understand in order to have an accurate understanding of just the simple, obvious moral truth that there shouldn't be suffering in this world and that we shouldn't cause suffering for each other. And then just a broad enough understanding of all the most prominent facts of what's going on in this world. These facts don't have to be understood in any superhuman level of detail in order for us to act to solve them. So it won't be a problem of information overload when we form this telepathic connection in groups of multiple people, especially since, again, we will have already reached most of this consensus just through us alone, us already kind and intelligent people just forming this clear worldview consensus with each other previously before this electromagnetic wave gets sent out remotely. Thus, we can continue developing this technology to synchronize the brainwave and heartbeat frequencies of larger and larger groups of people. Just keep expanding upon this technology until we eventually have devices the size of towers that can telepathically connect entire segments of the human population at once, areas as large as an entire city, let's say. So these towers can telepathically connect us by stabilizing the entire Earth's electromagnetic field, since, again, based on Persinger's work, calmness in this field allows our thoughts to be telepathically transmitted between each other more easily. And another study from the HeartMath Institute, shown here and in the description, synchronistically similar to Persinger's work, also found that the variation in people's heartbeat frequencies also correlates with variation in the Earth's Schumann resonance activity, thus suggesting that stabilization in the Earth's magnetic field can also synchronize all of our heartbeat frequencies as well. And so the end result of all of this brainwave and heartbeat synchronization will indeed be a mental unity among all humanity, a telepathic connection of all of our minds in which we are made to fully empathize with each other and therefore fully understand the most accurate truths of this world that any one of us understands. It is in this way that we will all finally work together to do everything that needs to be done in order to live without causing or allowing each other to suffer. So it bears repeating that in this process of creating this mental unity, nobody is being mind controlled or forced to believe anything that they don't honestly understand for themselves to be true. All of our perspectives on reality will simply be revealed to each other, as clearly as any one of us, including you, already understands these perspectives within our own minds, including your own mind, so that we can compare all of these perspectives to each other in such a way that it becomes undeniably clear which of them are the most accurate, most comprehensive pictures of objective reality, so that we can reach an honestly understood consensus on what is true about the world and what needs to be done in it. There is no groupthink or criminalizing any particular idea. All ideas are again simply shown for their true logical merit relative to all others, so that we simply learn to accept that which is true and to disbelieve that which is false. And if any one of us has an honest argument against any part of our previously reached consensus, then such an argument will also be understood for its true logical merit. And also, again, we are not erasing individuality. We are simply making all of us equally empathetic toward each other and equally understanding of what is objectively true, so that we can all respect each other's harmless uniqueness as individuals. And this mental unity is not any political system or hierarchy of control. Those of us who create it will have the same place in it as everybody else, with all of us having the equal opportunity to prove our understanding of reality to each other, and all of us being made to fully empathize with each other so that we all simply agree to live in harmony with each other based on the consensus we form on what is objectively true about the world, and therefore we'll all simply never control each other at all. And once this is accomplished, we won't have to stay telepathically connected with each other 24/7. We will simply live by our agreement on how to act toward each other with the empathy that has been instilled in us, and then we will continue telepathically connecting with each other as we see fit. So if you'll notice, this whole process of mental unity is what will indeed instill your level of empathy and understanding into the minds of all the selfish and ignorant people of this world. Again, it's not as simple as one snap of your fingers, but it can be achieved if enough of us put our minds to it. So if you want this mental unity to be made a reality, then please also contact me if you can provide any of the following: land or property on which we good people of the world can gather together to form our initial telepath connection using these psychedelic substances as well as brainwave synchronization technology. land or property on which we can further research and develop this brainwave synchronization technology, land on which to eventually develop this technology into the form of towers to spread our telepathic connection to large segments of the human population, materials with which to build and further develop this technology, laboratory authorization for any necessary people or organizations who can further develop this technology, and lastly, money to put aside into a fund to help with acquiring any of these other things. And there's absolutely no pressure on any particular person for this money, just if you happen to have a large surplus which you wish to put toward a benevolent purpose. And I will fully disclose the use of any and all money that may eventually be donated to this cause. If you cannot provide any of these things or meet in person with me, or provide any of the scientific expertise as previously mentioned, then please at least do the following. Please share this video with as many people as you can who also wish for the world's suffering to stop, especially anybody who can provide any of these things or meet in person with me. Please only share this video with these people who already wish for the world's suffering to stop. That way we can avoid problems with people who don't have the empathy or the intelligence to understand the goodness of this mental unity. It's worth noting that all of this is just a brief outline of what needs to be done. The remaining details are to be determined through our continued communication and collaboration with each other, meaning that if you can help assist this process in any of the ways described previously, then please let me know. And if you can't, then again, please share this video until it reaches enough people who can. Also, again, I'm open to feedback if you have any honest suggestions about how to make the process I've described in this presentation even more efficient. But if we can agree that we all can and should have all of our best empathy and all of our clearest understandings of reality directly telepathically diffused between every single one of our minds in order for us all to simply stop causing and allowing each other to suffer, if we can agree on this simple premise, and if none of us can come up with a better overall outline on how to accomplish this, then let us waste no time getting to work with this outline for now. Yes, telepathic technology might also potentially be used for other less benevolent purposes, but as the article below copied in the description explains, telepathic technology is being developed anyway. Such technology is more likely to be abused if it isn't used for the purpose of fundamentally ridding our minds of all of our ignorance and selfishness through the process of mental unity. And until this mental unity is created, human beings will inevitably continue to abuse each other and the rest of nature in all the other ways that they do as well. And even if this process somehow does not succeed in bringing every single person on Earth to a sufficient level of empathy, at the very least we will know who these empathy deficient people are, since we will be telepathically connected with these people on the level of their purely objective understanding of the world, which will include their understanding that their own understanding of their own lack of empathy. And those of us whose empathy is awakened within all of us together will act to make sure that these people don't harm anybody until we find a way by which these people can be healed of their antisociality or their psychopathy or sociopathy. And most likely the psychedelics, when administered properly, will be the primary means of treating these people, of healing these people. Psychedelics, again, are not the only aspect of this proposal for mental unity, but since these psychedelics are known to treat depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress, and really at the root of all psychopathy is just this same deep emotional pain which people don't know how to let go of, and so they try spreading this pain to others. These psychedelics can help with that as well, if the electromagnetic stimulation alone, if that alone can't help every single person out of their psychopathy. So also linked in the description of this video is the playlist containing my other videos where I explain this concept of mental unity. If you have any questions about anything that I've said so far in this presentation, you can listen through these other videos to see if your questions are answered there. And if your questions aren't answered there, then again, please contact me for clarification. Lastly, linked in the description is my research playlist containing all the videos previously listed as evidence for how mental unity can be created, as well as many other powerful sources of information on the nature of reality, the current state of this world, and what needs to be done in the world. I highly recommend watching these videos in the meantime while the plans get finalized to create this mental unity. I highly recommend watching these videos in the meantime to stay educated on what's going on in this world and why things need to change as soon as possible. These videos will also give you a better understanding of what exactly needs to be telepathically communicated to the rest of humanity through this mental unity. So again, please let me know if you have any questions or concerns about anything I have explained thus far, and once you understand the goodness of my proposal for mental unity, then please follow all the steps that you can to help me get it created. Even if, again, all you can do for now is share this video with other kind and intelligent people like yourself. Thank you.